And those who have elements of good and sincerity, they will be guided because of that good and sincerity. So it is not as if qadr comes out of a vacuum. Allah's qadr and Allah's hikmah are linked together. And we will see this in the next few ayat. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm going to be coughing throughout today, so please do excuse me. I'll make one generic apology, then I don't have to apologize every time I cough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا. We have put iron collars around their necks. فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ. So it is going up to their chins. The dhuqun is the chin, and adqan is plural. Dhuqun is the chin. فَهُمْ مُقَمَحُونَ. So their heads are raised up. Now, what does this mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving a very beautiful metaphor, a very beautiful analogy. That the people who have rejected Islam are so arrogant, they're not even looking at the truth. They are not even looking in front of them that there is guidance, there's light in front of them. The Sirat al-Mustaqim is in front of them. And they're not even looking at it. It's as if, now the word muqmahun is a very beautiful word. It's what the camels do after they gulp water. Next time you see a documentary about camels, when they gulp water, what do they do next? After they've drunk from a stream or a river, what do they do next? They raise their heads all the way back, and they just, I don't know what the purpose of that is, but they flip their necks backwards. And I guess the water gets back somewhere or something like that. But that's what muqmahun is. That the camel's head is literally going almost 180 degrees up. Right? That's what muqmahun is. So it's as if a man is being said to be so arrogant, his head is pointing straight upwards, which is the ultimate sign of arrogance. He's not even looking at the truth, looking at the path, looking at the light in front of him. So Allah Azza wa Jal is giving a metaphor for their arrogance, and then He is saying, don't worry, this arrogance, we knew it would happen. It has been decreed by us as well. They might as well be locked up in chains. They might as well have an iron collar that's forcing their necks all the way up. وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا. And on top of this, we've put barriers before them and behind them. They're immobile. Even if they could see, they wouldn't even be able to walk. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, the guidance is so clear, you are upon the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Remember the word Sirat al-Mustaqim? Ala Sirat al-Mustaqim. The Sirat is in front of them. You have the guidance from Allah. They're not looking at it. They're not going to move to follow it, even if it's in front of them. It's as if they've been bound up in chains. And on top of that, they are not even looking at the guidance. فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. So physically, it's as if their eyes are up. Physically, it's as if they have been chained up. And then physically, once again, it's as if their eyes have been covered up. And of course, in each of these, there's a metaphor as well. The metaphor of arrogance, the metaphor of not wanting to follow the truth, the metaphor of not even caring to look at the truth. فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. We have covered their eyes up. It is as if they are blind. وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Once again, our Prophet is being consoled. It doesn't matter. Whether you warn or you don't warn, they will not believe. Now notice, once again, we're talking about أَكْثَرُهُمْ, most of them. Not all of them. Not all of the Meccans rejected Islam. Some of them did, many of them did. And most of them did not believe until right in the end when the conquest of Mecca took place. That was when the majority were basically forced to accept Islam at the conquest of Mecca. So, notice here, those people whom Allah has said are not going to be guided, they have displayed sheer arrogance in multiple manners. They're not willing to walk to the truth. They're not willing to even look down and humble themselves at the truth. They're not even willing to open their eyes at the truth. So they deserve to be misguided. And this is, we said, Allah's qadr and Allah's hikmah are linked together. Now the opposite. Who will be the one who's guided? إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ بِالْغَيْبِ. The only people you can truly warn, and those who will believe in you, are those who follow the dhikr. And one of the names of the Quran is dhikr. One of the most common names of the Quran is dhikr. The kitab, the Quran, the tanzeel, the dhikr, and the Furqan. These are the most common names of the Quran. You should know this. And the meaning of dhikr, of course, is that which reminds. Dhikr, that which reminds you, that which brings you back to something you should already know, reminds you when you're heedless. So Allah is saying the only person who will truly find guidance from the dhikr are those who fear their Lord in private. Now, once again notice, who will Allah guide? Allah will guide those who have something good in their hearts. Those who fear Allah in private, Allah will guide them. Once again, qadr is not coming out of a vacuum. Qadr is linked to Allah's hikmah. If you are good, you deserve to be guided. And if you are bad, you don't deserve to be guided. If you fear Allah in private, if you have good iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah Azza wa Jal will guide you. إِنَّمَا تُنذِرْ مَنْ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Also notice, how is guidance manifested? When you are in private, what do? When nobody is watching you, that is when your real iman comes out. خَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ بِالْغَيْبِ. No one is seeing what you're doing, then your reality comes out. If you can act in a good manner, be a good person, do your ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a manifestation of true iman. As for this, فَبَشِّرْهُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ. This person, give him glad tidings of forgiveness and a generous reward. Now, forgiveness and a generous reward are linked together in the Quran many times. Maghfirah wa ajr, or other types of linkages. And this coming together is very significant, because without Allah's forgiveness, Allah's rewards for your deeds are meaningless. Because your sins are always more than your good. Because you can never earn Jannah. And if Allah were to just reward you without forgiving you, that reward will not get you what you need. And therefore, any time in the Quran, usually this is the rule, that Jannah or forgiveness or whatever is mentioned, it's linked with these two concepts. That first, Allah has to forgive. Once you're forgiven, then Allah Azza wa Jal will reward. Now notice, the reward has an adjective, ajrin kareem, whereas the forgiveness doesn't have an adjective. Why? Because even when Allah rewards you, the reward has to be much more than what you deserve to get to Jannah. The forgiveness is there, khalas, Allah's forgiven you. Now the reward, it has to be more than what you actually deserve. فَبَشِّرُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ. First you're going to be forgiven. Then وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ, a generous reward. Without a generous reward, there's no Jannah. And this is proven especially in a series of verses in Surah Fatir, where Allah describes the people of Jannah having a conversation, and the first thing they do, they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, Alhamdulillah, all thanks be to Allah who has caused us to enter Jannah. Inna Rabbana la ghafurun shakur. Our Lord is Ghafoor and our Lord is Shakur. Notice, the people of Jannah, what two names do they choose of Allah? Ghafoor and Shakur. And once again, those two names, they have the same connotations as we just said. Ghafoor, Allah is extra forgiving. Shakur, Allah is extra thankful at whatever good you've done. First, Allah has to forgive you. Then He has to reward you much more than you deserve. And then Jannah will be possible to enter. As our Prophet ﷺ said, no one amongst you will ever enter Jannah because of his good deeds. Based on his good deeds, you're never going to enter Jannah. Just because of your good deeds, you don't earn Jannah. So they said, وَلَا أَنْتَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, not even you, O Rasulullah. And he said, not even me, unless Allah envelopes me with His mercy, with His rahmah. Our deeds are not worthy of Jannah. How can they be when we worship Allah 40 years, 50 years? And even this 40, 50, it's not really 40, 50. If Allah gives you 60, 70 years, you spend 20 years growing up, 20 years sleeping, 20 years going to work, right? How much do you actually do in terms of ibadah and hamd of Allah? And then the quality of that, what is that? Right? So, put together you probably have 2-3 years of worship at max. And then we expect infinity in Jannah? No doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to forgive and then bless us extra more. And this is exactly what the ayah says. فَبَشِّرْهُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ. First Allah is going to forgive you, وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you a much better reward than you actually deserve. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. We are the ones who will resurrect the dead. وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. And we will write down all that they send ahead and their traces. Now what does this mean? It has a number of interpretations. The first interpretation, وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ, what they send ahead and what they leave behind. And what they send ahead means of good deeds. What they've done and it's gone and nobody knows. And then their athar, what they leave behind, these are the legacies that you leave in this dunya. What did you do in this dunya that is left after you die? Whose lives did you change? What good deeds or even bad deeds did you do? That people are still imitating. If you opened up a masjid, mashallah, tabarakallah, this is a good athar. If you were an owner, astaghfirullah, of a liquor store, this is a bad athar. And after you died, will continue to accrue sin for you. وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. We will write down what they send ahead and what they've left behind. Another interpretation, وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. We will write down what they send ahead and also their footsteps. And the word athar also means footsteps. And if you remember, we talked yesterday about the Banu Salama. What did our Prophet say to the Banu Salama? Stay where you are, your footsteps are being recorded. دِيَارُكُمْ تُكْتَبُ آثَارُكُمْ. Stay where you are, your footsteps are being recorded. And so athar also means footsteps. Qatada, one of the famous tabi'un, he said, if Allah were to ignore anything of mankind, He would have ignored the footsteps that even the wind gets rid of. But even the footsteps Allah will record. If Allah were to ignore anything, then the one thing that is worthy of just neglecting is your footsteps. Even the wind doesn't care about your footsteps. It erases the footsteps. But Allah will even write down the footsteps. وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. And of course we all know there are so many rewards of walking fi sabilillah, of walking to the masjid, of walking in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran itself mentions in Surah Tawbah that never do they travel any distance, nor do they take any footstep, except that Allah is aware of what they're doing. So Allah Azza wa Jal emphasizes footsteps because wallahi, we don't even know the number of footsteps we take from the kitchen to our bedroom, we don't even know. And yet Allah has recorded. The house that we live in, we have no clue from the entrance to the living room how many footsteps, we don't even count. It's something so common for us. But Allah is saying even that has been recorded. وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. And each and everything, كُلَّ شَيْء, there is no exception. أَحْصَيْنَا. And أَحْصَيْنَا is to guard meticulously. It's a higher level than حَفِظْنَا. It's a higher level than simply observing or looking. Ahsa means to meticulously monitor. It's like accounting every single penny. This is what ahsa. And the word accounting, ihsa'iyat, really is still the same thing, ihsa. That you're going to be monitoring with meticulous care. This is the word ahsa. Everything we have recorded it fi imamim mubin, in a clear imam. Now the word imam comes from amma. And amma means to lead, or to be the source of, or to be the origin of. And that is why our mother is called because she is our origin. Our mother is called And the imam is called imam because he leads us in our salah. And therefore, this imam over here that Allah is talking about is of course the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet. And Allah calls it Imam because in a way it is our leader, it is our guide, it is our prototype. Everything that this book contains, we will be doing it. So we're basically following along in what the book has decreed. So that book is our Imam, because it is our leader, our archetype. And everything we do, it will be already written. And this book is not obscure to those who know it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels, it is mubin to them. It's clear and open. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. And everything we have preserved and recorded in a clear book. Now, some of the benefits we can derive from this section of 12 verses before we move on to the next section. Some of the primary benefits of this entire section is that the first section of Surah Yasin, it deals with the fundamentals of Iman, all of them. Every single fundamental of Iman, and in particular, the Quran, belief in Allah Azza wa Jal, belief in the prophets. All of these are explicitly mentioned. That the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ is an undeniable, undisputed fact. It is in fact the highlight of this section. Why? Because there are so many ways of emphasizing it. Yasin wa Quran Hakim innaka minal mursaleen. That's how the surah begins. The Prophet ﷺ is of those who have been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the element of qadr is very clearly mentioned. The good qadr and the bad qadr. The believers have qadr and the unbelievers have qadr. The believers believe because of qadr and the unbelievers don't believe because of qadr. And we also learn here that Allah's qadr doesn't come out of a vacuum, as we said, that in Allah's infinite wisdom, whoever is misguided deserves to be misguided. And whoever is guided deserves to be guided. Now I just have to say here, everybody asks a lot of questions about qadr, and it's human nature to question qadr. If everything has been decreed, what is the point of actions? Even the Sahaba asked the Prophet about qadr. And it's, as I said, it's human nature. Every society, every civilization, every philosopher and theologian in the history of mankind has had to grapple with qadr. From the ancient Greeks up until modernity, people are trying to understand qadr, and the fact of the matter is, it is incomprehensible. Really, just to be simple about it. It's beyond our understanding. Because it is as if we are trying to understand Allah. And our limited minds will never understand Allah. And that is why if you look at the answers of the Prophet ﷺ to the Sahaba, when the Sahaba said, this is literally their question, which is a question that every da'i, including myself, gets asked. The most common thing about qadr. Shaykh, if everything's been decreed, what's the point of doing anything? This exact question was asked by the Sahaba to the Prophet ﷺ. That, Ya Rasulullah, if everything has been written, فَفِيمَ الْعَمَلِ, what's the point of doing anything? It's exactly the same thing. The Prophet ﷺ's response was not deeply philosophical. He didn't try to go into the intricacies of it, because subhanAllah, this is the beauty of Islam. He gave them the response that is to the point. i'malu. You guys do what you need to. i'malu. Do what you have to do. Don't just rely on qadr. You don't know what is qadr. You don't know. Allah knows. Because you don't know, you have to act as if the qadr is in your favor. And when you do that act, qadr will be in your favor. That's the whole point. i'malu فَكُلٌّ مُيَسَّرٌ لِمَا خُلِقَ لَهُ. This is what the Prophet responded. He said, go ahead and continue acting. Do what you need to do. For indeed, everyone will find it easy to do according to what Allah has destined for him. He did it. That's all. He left it at that. And if you really think about it, this response does not philosophically answer what the Sahaba asked, which is, what's the purpose of doing anything if Allah has decreed? And there is wisdom in this, because you cannot answer. You cannot answer that question in a manner that is intellectually satisfying. You cannot. Your mind will go in circles, infinite loop, and you're going to go crazy. That's exactly what Ibn Abbas said. Ibn Abbas said, Al-Qadr sirrullahi ta'ala. Qadr is the secret of Allah Azza wa Jal. Whoever tries to unravel the secret will end up rejecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is exactly what we have found in all of the groups that try to go too deep into qadr. You cannot understand qadr. You cannot. Because it is as if you in your finite mind are trying to understand the wisdom of Allah, the power of Allah, the knowledge of Allah. Qadr deals with all of these things. And your mind would simply go crazy. Literally, it's going to go crazy. So, Islamically, we are told, don't think too deeply about it. Qadr is there, but you don't know it. Because you don't know it, you act as if it's in your favor, and lo and behold, if you do act in that manner, it will be in your favor. This is the beauty of it, right? If you act in the manner that Qadr is for my good, inshallah I'm going to go to Jannah, I'm going to be good, it will be in your favor. And that's the whole point of Qadr. Leave it at that simple level. We also pointed out, well actually we didn't point out, no. One important thing we didn't point out. In this ayah number 12, we are introduced to the main theme of the entire surah. The gist of the entire surah is the concept of resurrection and ba'th. Inna nahnu nuhyi al-mawta. The whole surah from beginning to end, really, it is about qiyamah. It is about resurrection, the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring back the dead. And this might also explain why this surah should be recited over the one who is dying as well. It might have a wisdom in that as well. That this surah is all about bringing the dead back to life. Also notice here, Allah links together, Inna nahnu nuhyi al-mawta wa naktubu ma qaddamu. We resurrect the dead and we're writing what they do. What is the linkage between resurrecting the dead and writing what they do? They seem to be totally unrelated. What's the linkage between Inna nahnu nuhyi al-mawta and then naktubu ma qaddamu? Yes?
Everybody will go with the deeds actually, whether good or bad, so it has to go with that.
Okay, everybody will go with his deeds. What else?
Maybe after they're resurrected, that their books will be manifested and presented to them. So maybe that's why it comes after the fact that they're resurrected.
Okay, this is definitely a valid point. By the way, there's multiple answers that are valid, not just one answer. This is a valid point that when they're resurrected, their deeds will be shown to them. Okay, so they're being linked together. But there's another linkage that is very profound as well. We resurrect the dead, we write their deeds.
After the fact?
I don't get that after the fact meaning.
The fact that it's written after the fact, so the link is being shown to them perhaps, that it's written after they're dead?
No, but the deeds are going to be written while they're alive.
So the death is also written?
The death is, okay, that is all. That's a valid point. Death is also written. Yes, sister in the back.
But I just said earlier about the legacy that we leave. So what about, like, you were saying if you help build the masjid or the legacy store, and whatever follows behind that, is that going to be written when the person's resurrected? What the other people did with that?
Okay, so it will be written down and the legacies will be recorded. But there is yet another point. Yes, finally, go ahead.
Evidence, there's evidence of their combining both of these answers, like an evidence then for the reward of punishment. Like
yes, this is true. It will be an evidence for reward and punishment.
Hands and all that will be answering, marking, and then it's written as well. So it's kind of an evidence.
Yes, this is true. Go ahead further.
Maybe another dimension is to resurrect the spiritually dead, because later in the surah Allah says man kana hayyan.
Resurrect the spiritually dead over here. I didn't have any tips. I don't remember anybody of early classical scholars interpreting this verse as spiritual, but maybe. Okay, one of the connections, and Allah knows best, is that Allah Azza wa Jalla is reminding them, not only your bodies, but your legacies will also be resurrected. Not only your bodies will come back, but even the actions that you have done, they will also come back in front of you. Right? So there's a linkage between. So why is Allah beginning the verse by saying, we will resurrect the dead, and we're writing your good deeds and your footsteps? What is the linkage here? Meaning, not only will you come back in your bodies, your lives that you have done will also be brought back to you. Right? Everything you have done, every footstep you've taken, it will be recorded and brought back to you. So there is this notion of your life being eternal. The akhirah will be eternal. And all that you do has been recorded and it will be brought forward to the next life as well. We now get to the second section that we're going to do. And unfortunately I'm not able to recite because my voice is not up to par. Otherwise, inshallah, it was in the other class we recited these verses. But we'll just begin them, inshallah ta'ala. And so the next is basically from ayah number 13 to 19. Actually, that's part 1 of the story, and then 20 to 27 is part 2 of the story. So really, this story, all of this story is from 13 to 27. And this is the story of the people of the city. The story of the people of the city. وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابَ الْقَرْيَةِ. Give them the example, the method of the people of the city. إِذْ جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ. When the messengers or the people who were sent to them came to them. Okay, the word method in Arabic, we know it's a parable, we know it's an example, but the word parable does not do justice to method. Because method can have two types. There are two types of method in Arabic. The first is a factual method, which is not a parable, it's basically a story. It's basically a historical anecdote. And the second is a symbolic parable. Symbolic parable. Both of these are called method. Again, the difference is one type of method is a fact, and the other is not quite fiction, but symbolic. It's parable. So an actual method is in front of us here. There's a real city, people came to the city, this is what happened, this is a method. And the point of the method is to draw benefit from the factual story. Another example of a method is a symbolic method. As Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَسْتَحِي أَنْ يَضْرِبَ مَثَلًا مَا بَعُوضَةً فَمَا فَوْقَهَا. Allah is not embarrassed to give the method of a fly or a mosquito or anything above that. An example. And Allah gives an example of a fly. That look at the fly when it steals the food from the idols. Right? So there's parabolical or symbolic method, and then there is a factual method. And what is going to follow right now is a factual method. A method that actually took place. Now, where is this? Who are these people? And what is this city? The majority interpretation, and inshallah it seems to be the correct one, is that this is the city of Antioch. Antioch. And the city of Antioch is in modern Turkey, but it used to be in Syria in ancient times. And the reference to the Mursalun is not to actual prophets, but rather those sent by a prophet, and that is the Prophet Jesus. So these are the disciples of Jesus. And it is allowed to call somebody who is sent a mursal. It is allowed to call somebody who is sent a mursal. And they are not called Nabi, nor are they called Rasul. They're called Mursalun. And Mursalun means they have been sent. And they had been sent by Jesus Christ. So we are not talking about 3 prophets or 3 messengers. We're talking about what we call in modern Islam da'is, du'at. We're talking about 3 callers to Islam. This is the Mursalun, right? And this is the majority interpretation. There is a very small minority that says this is another city and 3 prophets came to them. However, in the entire history of Islam, we have never heard of any city that has had 3 prophets sent to them. We have had one situation of 2 prophets being sent, Harun and Musa. But even this, Musa was the one that Allah Azza wa Jalla chose and sent. Then Musa said, gift me Harun. I want another person, gift me Harun. Right? And so Allah Azza wa Jalla gave him Harun as a helper. Otherwise, the general rule is that 1 prophet, 1 nation, 1 messenger, 1 nation. This is the general rule. So if there was a case where 3 prophets were sent to a city, surely we would have heard about this in more detail. And this does not seem to be what is intended here. Rather, what is intended is Jesus Christ directly, or perhaps after his raising up, the disciples themselves ventured on. Let's leave questions inshallah in a bit. Disciples themselves ventured on. Now, why Antioch? Why Antakya? Antakya is the Arab way of saying Antioch. Why Antioch? Well, because Antioch had the largest Jewish population outside of Jerusalem at the time. And it was reasonable distance from Jerusalem. The greatest number of Jews were in Jerusalem, and Jesus Christ came to Jerusalem, preached in Jerusalem, and the disciples went to neighboring Jewish civilizations or Jewish peoples, because obviously we believe that Jesus Christ was sent to the Bani Israel only. He was not really sent to the Romans. And the Jews were a minority, a subjugated minority under the Romans. And so the disciples of Jesus ventured onto Antioch to preach to their fellow Jews about the message of Jesus Christ. And of course, even though they have been sent to the Jews, it's not as if they're not going to speak to the Romans. It's not as if they're not going to preach them the generic Tawheed, but the emphasis and the main point was to their fellow Jews. So the story, therefore, involves an example of the people of Mecca to pay attention to, about the people of Antioch. Allah is saying, give the people of Mecca an example. Let them pay heed to this example. What is this example? The city of Antioch. And the prophets came to them. إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ اثْنَيْنِ When we sent to them two, and Allah ascribes the sending to Him because they're preaching His message, not that they are prophets. But everything that happens of good, Allah Azza wa Jal ascribes it to Himself. Allah has willed it. Allah has decreed it. We were the ones who caused two to go to them. Now, by the way, without going into too much details, not beyond the scope of this class, the New Testament actually has this story about the disciples going to Antioch, two of them going back to Jerusalem, and then three of them going back. So the rudimentary version of the story, with differences, is found in the New Testament. And that's really beyond the scope of this. There are, as usual, always minor differences in the Quran and in the New Testament, but the gist of the story is there. That there's the city of Antioch, people went there, two of the disciples went from Jerusalem, they were kicked out, they went back, they got a third, and they then went back to Antioch. So, we sent to them two. فَكَذَّبُوهُمَا The Jews rejected them. فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ Remember, one of the meanings of Aziz was? Okay. Another meaning is to strengthen. So فَعَزَّزْنَا We strengthened them with a third. We strengthened them with a third. فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ They said, now the translation here, we have been sent to you as messengers with a capital M. I disagree with this translation. They are not messengers with a capital M. Rather, Jesus has sent us to you. Either directly or indirectly. Meaning, either Jesus is still alive and He's told us to come preach to you, or, of course Jesus is still alive, let me not rephrase that, okay? Or, Jesus has been raised up and we are now sent to you on behalf of His mission. Right? Again, the point is the same, that we have come to you to preach the message of Jesus Christ. إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ قَالُوا مَا أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُنَا They said, you are only people like us. وَمَا أَنزَلَ الرَّحْمَنُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ And Ar-Rahman has not revealed anything, we will add here new, إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا تَكْذِبُونَ You're only a bunch of liars. Now, the Yahud were expecting the Messiah. But their conception of the Messiah was very different than Jesus Christ. They wanted a Messiah who would give them power and money and glory. And Jesus did not come with power. Jesus came with meekness and humility. Jesus did not come to overthrow the Romans. He came to preach Tawheed. So when they saw that this Messiah was not giving them that kingdom that they wanted the times of David to return. They wanted to be powerful and rich, right? And they wanted some superhuman to come and change entire things. Pause here, footnote. Some later time will happen when somebody will come that seems superhuman. And that's why they're going to follow that figure. That's besides the point. Anyway, back over here. You guys not get that apparently.
Good job.
Yes, the one-eyed. He will come with power and grandeur and majesty, so it appears. And He will do lots of power and fasad in this world. And that is why they will assume Him to be the Messiah. Because that is what they want. And they're not looking for Islam and Tawheed and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not. They're looking for izzah and fitna and fasad. And when the one-eyed person will come, and that person will be somewhat superhuman, right? You understand what I'm saying? Looks superhuman, then they will follow that person, right? So, when Jesus came, they mocked him, they rejected him. What Messiah are you? Even the New Testament says this. Where is your kingdom? Where is your kingdom? And he says the kingdom is in heaven, the kingdom is the next world. This is in the New Testament, by the way, right? I'm paraphrasing, I haven't memorized the New Testament, but you get my point. That they want the kingdom. Where is it? Show us the power. And he says, no, that's going to come. The kingdom is with my Father, up there. It's going to happen. It's not going to be here. Right? The real Jannah that you want, that's going to be there. In any case, so over here they say the same thing. You're all a bunch of humans. You can't expect us to believe in you. We don't believe in any revelation after Musa's revelation. That's the only revelation they believed in. In antum illa takdibun. Now, the fact that they use the term Ar-Rahman kind of helps the thesis of the story that these are Jews. Why? Because Jews never mention the name of Allah directly. To this day, by the way. It is blasphemous for them to mention the name of Allah. The name of Allah. And they don't even call it other than the Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton, which is the 4 letters of the name of Allah, which basically the Christians translate as Jehovah, Yahweh. Yehud never say this. It is blasphemous for the Yehud to utter what I have just uttered. They never mention this, right? And they consider to be, well, the Old Testament says punishable by death, but nobody does that anymore. So the point is they consider to be two, even in English, by the way, when they write the name of God, they write G-D. G-D. Not even G-O-D. Like, this is their, I mean, yeah, that's their aqidah. I mean, you know, Allahu A'lam, maybe there was some basis. We don't want to, say anything. Maybe it was something in their sharia. Allah knows best. So this kind of helps this, because they don't mention Allah, they mention other things. So Ar-Rahman, the ever merciful. Okay, they'll mention something else. وَمَا أَنزَلَ الرَّحْمَنُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا تَكْذِبُونَ. You guys are only lying. There's no prophet. There's no Messiah. Jesus is not the prophet. إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا تَكْذِبُونَ. قَالُوا رَبُّنَا. Now notice here, by the way, these excuses, now the whole method, keep it in mind, every ayah, it's relevant to the people of Mecca. Everything we're going to read, déjà vu for the people of Mecca. This is exactly their excuses as well. You're just men like us. Allah didn't reveal anything. You're just lying. Exact same thing. قَالُوا رَبُّنَا يَعْلَمُ إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ لَمُرْسَلُونَ. Our Lord knows that we are sent with the truth. And this shows us a beautiful psychological point. The believer in Allah always consoles himself with the knowledge of Allah at times of distress. You turn to Allah. Mankind has made fun of you, they've rejected you. You have a relationship with Allah. Allah knows. You have a communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is of the height of Iman. That at times of distress, at times of fitna, at times of trial and tribulation, the believer's heart turns to Allah. You've rejected me. You know what? I don't care. Allah knows I'm telling you the truth. رَبُّنَا يَعْلَمُ إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ لَمُرْسَلُونَ. And this is a message to our Prophet ﷺ. Console yourself with the fact Allah knows you are a prophet. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. And you know what? Our job is only to tell you the truth. It's up to you to accept or reject. And again, this is a message to our Prophet ﷺ as well. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. That our job is only to convey the truth, and it is your responsibility to accept or reject. قَالُوا إِنَّا تَطَيَّرْنَا بِكُمْ. Their response was, we have read bad luck into you. You are the source of bad luck. It is said that there was a drought in the city for that year, and their fruits did not bear fruit for that particular season. So they said, this is because you guys have come here preaching so many times. You guys are bad luck. قَالُوا إِنَّا تَطَيَّرْنَا بِكُمْ. You guys are bad luck. لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهُوا. And this is, by the way, the response of this is the response of the people who cannot argue the truth logically and rationally. They will excuse me. They will resort to one of two things. Number one, superstition. And number two, brute force and punishment. And they did the both. When you cannot respond logically and rationally, the next step is to go irrational. You guys are just bad luck. And then to go physical. And if you don't stop, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهُوا لَنَرْجُمَنَّكُمْ, we will stone you to death. وَلَيَمَسَّنَّكُمْ مِنَّا عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, and you will feel from us what does it mean to be punished. A painful punishment will come from us to you. The truth does not need to be supported by brute force and might. The truth is clear in and of itself. It is only those who oppose the truth that are forced to threaten because they cannot respond to the truth with logic. And this is exactly what Musa and Fir'aun's story goes as well. When Musa came with his signs and he's arguing with them, what does Fir'aun say? If you don't stop, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to throw you away into jail. This is the threat of the tyrants who cannot respond to the truth with logic and reason. So they say, you guys are bad luck, and if you don't stop, we will get rid of you, we will kill you, we will torture you to death. Now, it is said that the Jews over here, they got the Roman authorities involved. And this is not too far from the truth to believe, because that is exactly what they did in Jerusalem with Jesus Christ. That when they got so irritated with Jesus, well, the law was not in the hands of the Jews. The Jews were a minority. It was the Romans who were the ones who were in charge. And of course, the story goes in the New Testament that the Jews basically went to, this is the cause of the anti-Semitism in the Christian communities in medieval times, that the Jews went and complained to the Roman governor. And they said, there is a man who pretends to be the king. He is political, because they couldn't care about theology. They couldn't say he's deviant or heretic or something. They had to bring it into the language of the Romans. And they said he claims to be a king. And he claims to be a political threat. And that is when the Romans got involved. And then the Romans basically decreed that he should be killed. And so Allah Azza wa Jal raised him up, as the story goes in the Quran. So the Yahud turned to the Romans for help against their fellow Yahud. They did this with Jesus Christ, and they did it again in Antioch. That they wanted to get rid of these disciples, but they don't have the power, they don't have the government, so they go to the local authorities. And the local authorities get involved, and they then tell them, you're going to have to leave, and they threaten to kill, and they threaten to torture them. And they say, you guys are bad luck, you guys have done this, you guys have done that. So the people respond, قَالُوا طَائِرُكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. They said, your bad luck is with you. Now this has one of two meanings. This has one of two meanings. The first meaning, your bad luck is your own imagination. There is no such thing as bad luck. طَائِرُكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. It's a figment of your own imagination. قَالُوا طَائِرُكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. You guys are inventing this. You guys are making this up. Your evil omens are with you. And we as Muslims don't believe in evil omens. Who took light of guidance so many years ago? Just 5 people, mashallah, tabarakallah. 6, okay, mashallah, 6 people, yes. So why are omens called tatayyur in Arabic? Who can remind me? Bird, good, mashallah. Big bird? Or small bird? Why? Why are omens called tatayyur? Ta'ir. Ta'ir. Yes, Adam.
They used to observe birds or to analyze omens?
They used to observe birds to analyze omens. So the word for omens is linked to birds. Yes, very good. One person remembers at least. Tatayyur comes from tayr, comes from birds. So the word for omens in Arabic is also the word for birds. In the base root. Tayr, ta'ir is bird, tatayyur is omens. And the Arabs would use birds for omens, so that's why the Arabic for birds, for omens comes from bird. And our Prophet ﷺ said, hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, at-tiyaratu shirk, at-tiyaratu shirk. Believing in omens is shirk, believing in omens is shirk. We don't believe in omens. And believing in omens is a type of shirk. We talked about this in a lot of detail in Light of Guidance. So the first interpretation, طَائِرُكُمْ مَعَكُمْ, Your omens are a part of your own imagination. They don't really exist. The second interpretation, your bad luck comes from you, not from us. Meaning anything bad that happens, you're the cause of it. So the word ta'irukum in this meaning doesn't mean omen, it means the effects of evil, the drought. So in the first interpretation, what happened to my voice? The voice seems to be... Oh, there you go, okay. I'm wondering, what are you guys doing? Okay. The first interpretation, ta'irukum ma'akum, ta'ir means omens, and your omens are with you means they're a figment of your imagination. In the second interpretation, the word ta'ir would not translate as omens. It means what you guys are calling bad luck, i.e. the drought. Your drought is because of your own sins. Now this is Islamically true as well, correct? Whatever musibah happens to you is because of what you have done, correct? So, your bad luck is because of your own deeds. طَائِرُكُمْ مَعَكُمْ أَإِن ذُكِّرْتُمْ. When you are, now this is a rhetorical question, when you are reminded to believe in Allah, this is how you respond, meaning there's a dot here, أَإِن ذُكِّرْتُمْ dot dot dot. It's not quite mentioned, what? When we tell you about the truth, this is how you respond? That you tell us bad luck and you tell us you're going to kill us? This is the meaning. أَإِن ذُكِّرْتُمْ. This is your response when you're reminded. بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ. You are a people that have gone beyond bounds. You are a people that have gone beyond what is reasonable to go. But أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ. You guys have gone beyond the bounds. Now, what was the response? What happened? So the people surrounded them. They're threatening to kill them. They're threatening to torture them to death. And the news spreads in the city that the Romans are about to kill these people, these three disciples of Jesus Christ. When the news spreads, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. A man comes running from the very furthest part of the town. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ. From the very furthest part of the town he comes running. So the people were in the downtown, the central area. They were giving da'wah to the people in the marketplace, to the elite, to the rich. In those days, downtown was where all of the rich people and the powerful people lived. And the suburbs was where the poorer class generally lived. And in our times, the opposite is the case. This is a modern phenomenon where the suburbs have become the affluent and the wealthy, and then the downtown generally has become a little bit less socioeconomic status. In those days, it was always the opposite. The closer you are to the middle, the higher up you are. So they're preaching over there, they're giving da'wah over there. A man comes from the furthest portion of the city, and this shows us that their affair had reached the entire city. Their news had reached the whole city. It's become a national event now, that these people are going to be killed or tortured, things are happening, and so somebody comes running from the very furthest portion. And this shows us that the truth always has supporters, even if you don't know them. The truth is so powerful, there will be help coming from sources you don't expect. From a place from far, far away, you never expected it, and yet the help came. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. A man comes running from the very furthest portion of the town, and he's screaming to help save those three people. And this man clearly was a Roman, not a Jew. And he's speaking to his fellow Romans not to kill them. And this shows us, and we know this from the New Testament as well, that many Romans had accepted the teachings of Jesus Christ. There were many Roman converts as well, because the truth was too powerful. The truth was clearly there. So the Romans converted. And this is a secret Roman convert. And he comes running and he says to his people, "O my people, follow those who have been sent. Follow those who do not ask you for any money, and they are correctly guided." Now once again, always look at these ayat in light of Mecca and the Quraysh and the Prophet ﷺ. The Quraysh are being told that this is a man who's preaching to you the truth, and he's not asking for anything in return. Why would you doubt his motives? You know him, you know he's honest, and he's not doing this for worldly power, for monetary gain, and he's coming with guidance. Now both of these points are explicitly mentioned in the Quran. يَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مَالًا يَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. I'm not asking you for any money. I'm not asking you for any benefit. And then the issue of I'm bringing you a guidance. In the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ tells the Quraysh, what if I have something that is better guidance than what your forefathers have? What if what I'm bringing to you for you is a better truth than what you already possess? And therefore, we learn from this that emphasizing the character of the Prophet ﷺ is a very important part of da'wah. Why would he be preaching what he's preaching? Where did this message come from? What did he gain by doing all of this? And that is why the characters of the prophets have to be impeccable. All prophets of Allah. No prophet can have a character flaw that causes you to doubt his sincerity, his teachings. اتَّبِعُوا مَنْ لَا يَسْأَلُكُمْ أَجْرًا وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ. Now, the people must have surrounded this Roman, and they said, are you a convert to this man's faith? You have become a follower of this religion? And so he responds to them, وَمَا لِيَ لَا أَعْبُدُ الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. He's defending his own faith now. After he's questioned about his faith, now he becomes the object of attack. Why? Because the Romans, they felt killing these people from Jerusalem will be problematic. You're going to bring in an international scenario, let's say. Whereas this guy is a fellow person from Antioch, and he's a fellow Roman. They can get away with being harsher with him than they can with the three from Jerusalem. So their anger now becomes directed all towards this one person, because he's a traitor to their own religion. As for the Jews of Jerusalem, what did you expect? They already have their religion. But this man, he's a traitor to their own religion. So he is questioned, are you following this man? And he responds, وَمَا لِيَ لَا أَعْبُدُ الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Why should I not worship the one who created me? And you shall return to him. Now notice the quick change in pronouns. The subtle change in pronouns. He created me, and you shall return to him. And the point here is very simple and yet profound. He's trying to show the logic of him embracing Islam, i.e. Christianity, Judaism, call it what you will at the time, the message of Jesus Christ. Why should I not worship the one who created me? So he's linking his Islam to his creator, which is common sense, right? And then he puts in a little bit of a threat for themselves. Who is going to cause you to die? Where will you go back to? Shouldn't you also have a link with your own creator who will take you back at the time of death? He created me, so I worship him. But how about you? Where are you going to end up? Who's going to take your soul? You are going to go back to him. So think about that. And we're going to see the same shift of pronoun in the next series of ayat as well. أَأَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً. Do you really think, now notice, both of these questions are rhetorical. وَمَا لِيَ لَا أَأَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِهِ. Both of these questions are rhetorical. And the purpose of a rhetorical question is to tell you a fact. Is to tell you something that is already well known. And this is one of the ways of da'wah. It's so obvious that this religion is true. Why shouldn't I? Do you really think I should? This is the way the questions are going. And again, the point being the confidence that the man has in his own faith. And this shows us a da'i has to be confident. This is why I hate apologetics, by the way. I cannot stand people who want to make Islam wishy-washy. How are you going to be a person calling to your faith when you're not even proud of your faith? When you have to find loopholes for your own faith, right? You're embarrassed about your faith. The da'i has to be confident. This is the truth from Allah. And you can see this confidence even in his questioning of his own people. Do you really think أَأَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِهِ آلِهَةً, that I should worship besides him gods? إِن يُرِدْنِ الرَّحْمَنُ بِضُرٍّ. If Ar-Rahman intends any harm, لَا تُغْنِ عَنِّي شَفَاعَتُمْ شَيْءٍ وَلَا يُنْقِذُونَ. These false gods will not be able to intercede, nor can they save me from what Allah has decreed. Now notice, many points here. And again, I have to apologize that this is a basic tafsir, or else, wallahi, we could spend days just on every ayah and every word and whatnot, but we just have to gloss over it quickly. Notice a number of things. Firstly, The message, of course, is from the Romans to his fellow Romans, but it's being smacked upon the head of the Quraysh. That's the point of these ayat. It's the Quraysh being spoken to. The Romans are well gone now. The point of these verses is the Quraysh. And Allah is telling them what they already know. Isn't it foolish to worship these gods who never help you when you need them to help you? And they can never save you from what Allah has decreed. And you, O Quraysh, already know this. How do we know they know this? How do we know that the Quraysh know this fact?
News used to come.
Brother, what did you say?
Because they used to worship Allah in the first place, and then they went to these gods.
Okay, what else? There's something even more explicit, yes?
Is it the New Testament?
No. How do we know that the Quraysh knew that these gods are not going to help them?
Because they intercede through them.
Something else, yes?
They built the gods themselves.
That's what the brother said. Close enough. Back, go ahead. Close, but no, not quite. No, not quite. Yes?
Is it the fact that they're responding just like these people did with threatening and, being superstitious?
No, even though they were threatening and superstitious. Look, the Quran tells us when the Quraysh are about to drown, when they're about to be killed, when something happens, who do they turn to? Correct?
Yes.
Right? Over a dozen verses in the Quran. When they're really in trouble, دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They go to Allah direct. Only at times of ease will they worship their false gods. Deep down inside, the Quraysh knew that only Allah responds to their du'as. And that's exactly what the Quraysh are being hit on the head with. Now look, the Roman is saying it, you also know this. Does it make any sense that I should worship these beings that, if Allah wants something else, they were not going to intercede, nor can they save me? Also notice, he uses the word Ar-Rahman, even though he's a Roman. He doesn't have the issue of the word of God or whatnot. One wisdom is that if Ar-Rahman wants to harm me, seems a little bit awkward. Why would Ar-Rahman want to harm me? In yurid Ar-Rahmanu bi-durrin. Ar-Rahman, why would he harm? He's trying to emphasize, if you believe in Ar-Rahman, you're not going to be harmed. Ar-Rahman would not harm you because he's Ar-Rahman. Right? So he's choosing a name that is like, look, this is your loving, compassionate, caring God. If you turn to him, he'll be your protector. So he's using that name to evoke that sympathy and elicit that feelings from the Romans. Then he says, إِنِّي إِذًا لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. I would be so foolish if I did that. إِنِّي آمَنْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. I have believed in your Rabb. فَاسْمَعُونِي. So listen to me. Once again, what's just happened? Shifted pronouns. How can I worship false gods? I would be an utter fool if I did that. I have believed in your Lord. Notice the shift in pronouns, right? And wallahi, this is the height of wisdom in da'wah. He's ascribing stupidity and foolishness to himself if he were to be upon their religion, but he doesn't say, you guys are foolish. Are you guys seeing this point here? Compare this to some of our overzealous brothers in particular. They think it's Islamic to mock kafirs and their religion. They think it's part of da'wah to basically diss what other people believe. That's utterly foolish. It really is. Look at these people. Look at this da'i. What is he saying? If I were to worship these false gods, what a fool I am. He doesn't say, you guys are fools for believing in your gods. But that's the implicit message being given in a much more wise manner. He takes the blame. Because then why should I worship these false gods? And this shows us, and this is human nature philosophy. When you, psychology, when you accuse somebody of anything, instant response is to deny that. It's an instant response. It's like, what are you talking about, man? No, I didn't. Just immediate. Whereas when you talk about in the first person, you make him think. You bring out the same logic in him. Come on, you really think I should believe that God has a son? You think I find this logical, that this beautiful creation and whatnot has multiple creators? You put it in yourself. And then you make the man think. Whereas if you accuse him, instantaneously he's going to go on the defensive. So the man is saying, Inni idhan lafi dalalin mubin, and then he's saying, I have believed in your God. This is all of our God. This is our God. Inni amantu bi rabbikum. This is your Rabb as well. Fasma'un. So listen to me. Fasma'un. So the Romans have surrounded him. The Romans are accusing him. We can sense the tension by his clear tone of voice, by the fact he has to plead, justify his own belief. And then all of a sudden, there's a big gap in the story. قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. He was said, enter Jannah. Well, hold on a sec. 1 second he is explaining Islam. The next second he's entering Jannah. What just happened? They killed him. They killed him. And this death is not mentioned at all. It's not even indirectly referenced. It's just understood. قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. He was said to enter Jannah. It was told to him, enter Jannah. Now, number of things here. Firstly, the continuity of the story hints at the fact that literally 1 minute he's speaking to his people and the next minute he's in Jannah. And this is what we believe about the shaheed. That the shaheed is the only person who will actually enter Jannah before the rest of us ever enter it, until Yawm al-Qiyamah. The shaheed will enter Jannah right here and now, after his shahada, before Yawm al-Qiyamah. But of course he will be in the body of a green bird, right? In the body of a green bird. So he will be in Jannah, but not quite in Jannah. He will see Jannah, smell Jannah, but he's not living Jannah. He'll be flying around, enjoying the sights, but he can't live the pleasures of Jannah. That will be afterwards. Right? That's going to be afterwards, which is still far better than those of us who don't die that death, which is going to be after Yawm al-Qiyamah. So, instantaneously, and this is the point being given to us as Muslims, that when he died this death, khalas, immediately qila khul jannah. Now, the death is not mentioned, whereas the scholars of Tafsir say he died a very gruesome death. The mob just surrounded him and began beating him to death. It was a mob mentality death, and that is the most gruesome death. Where you are beaten to death, you're kicked to death, people just surround you, and it's a very bad death in the sense of physical pain, right? Now, we already explained, the Romans felt more impunity killing one of their own than to get rid of the 3 from Jerusalem, because they knew this would have caused a bigger scandal. This is another principality, and there are not Romans, they're Jews, and this and that. So they felt if they kill this man, their anger has already been built up, right? It's a mob taking place. And this is what happens in mob mentality, that the anger just becomes exacerbated and accentuated onto this one person. So they just got rid of their anger on this person and they simply killed him. Now, the death is not mentioned. Why is it not mentioned? 2 reasons. Number 1, it is the Quranic methodology that we see over and over again, that the good is mentioned in much more detail than the bad. The good stuff is mentioned in a lot more detail than the bad stuff. And we will see this over and over again, even in Yasin and Al-Rahman, the descriptions of Jannah versus Jahannam. Always the descriptions of Jannah are much more detailed than the descriptions of Jahannam. And the good is emphasized more than the bad. So this is one reason, that you just kind of overlook. You don't really dwell on the evil. And the good is what you concentrate on. And number 2, probably even more important, remember, this story is a mathal for the Quraysh, correct? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to tell them that this man was kicked to death? What message are you sending? That's not what needs to be told to the Quraysh. Right? And so that part is just glossed over. No need to tell them that. Yet, we, and this is wallahi absolutely amazing, understand these details. Allah communicated it to us in a way that the Quraysh went over their heads. The Quraysh don't need to know he was kicked to death. They're not going to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Even if they weren't going to, they should not gloat over the fact that this da'i died. That's not a part of the moral of the story. So Allah doesn't even mention it. And the Quraysh, not understanding the intricacies of the Quran, would not understand what happened to the man. Whereas us, we can benefit from that tangent. And we can derive morals from that issue, as we are doing right now. So it is as if Allah communicated to us what we need to know, and He communicated to the Quraysh what they need to know from the very same passage. Isn't that amazing? That's the beauty of the Quran here. عَلِمَهُ مَنْ عَلِمَهُ وَجَهِلَهُ مَنْ جَهِلَهُ. So, قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. It was said to him, go ahead and enter Jannah. قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. This is the last ayah we'll do, بِمَا غَفَرَ رَبِّي, and then we'll take our break. So it was said to him, go ahead and enter Jannah. And he says, how I wish my people knew. قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. How I wish my people knew. What did they know? بِمَا غَفَرَ لِي رَبِّي. How my Lord has forgiven me, وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ, and made me of the honored ones. Didn't we just talk about forgiveness and honoring? Here we see it again. Right? Even though he's a shaheed, he still needs to be forgiven. Even though he's a shaheed, there has to come first Allah's forgiveness and then Allah's honor. بِمَا غَفَرَ لِرَبِّي وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ. How my Lord has forgiven me and He has made me of those who have been honored. Of those who have been honored. And some of the benefits that we gain from this section, and then we'll just take our break inshaAllah ta'ala. Some of the benefits we'll gain from this section. Of the most interesting points of the Quranic stories is the fact that the Quranic stories are very different from biblical stories. Anybody amongst us who reads the Bible, we are instantaneously overwhelmed with what?
Details.
Details that are so boring and so confusing. Genealogies, lineages, details that have nothing. Look at this story. We don't know the name of the city. We don't know the names of the messengers. We don't know anything. And yet, all of the morals are there for us to learn from. And this is the beauty of Quranic stories. Quranic stories are straightforward, to the point. Get the message. Forget about the details. This is what you need to understand. Whereas the biblical stories, because obviously they're man-written and whatnot, so every single useless detail has been preserved. Complete. So much stuff, it just boggles the mind. And the Quranic equivalent is, of course, the exact opposite. Also, we notice over here how many different ways the Quran is using to get the point across. Even in the first 20, 30 verses. Stories, enticements, threats, detailed theologies, laws, methods, parables. Different ways of getting the point across. In these 30 verses, there have been at least 7, 8 different da'wah techniques. And many of us, we really have a very naive or simplistic notion of da'wah, that we just have to speak for 5, 10 minutes and then all of the people are going to convert. The Quran is using so many different ways, and still Allah says most of them are not going to believe. This is human nature. It's very difficult to break away from your culture, from what your parents have ingrained you with. It's very difficult to stand up against your entire society and say, I have accepted the truth, in contrast to my own culture. It's a very long and hard journey. And only those whom Allah Azza wa Jalla has chosen are going to embark on that journey. We also notice, as we said, the entire story, even though it's a story about Romans and Jews, it is 110% relevant to Mecca and Quraysh and the Prophet. Literally every ayah. Go back and read this later on tonight. Every ayah and every point, it is as if it's talking about Mecca and the Prophet, even though the story is about Antioch and the Jews and Bani Israel and the Romans. And this is the beauty once again of the Quran, that Allah chose, and the details that go against it are not mentioned, such as the killing. We don't need to know this. The Quraysh don't need to know this, right? We can benefit. The Quraysh, they don't need to know this. So those are completely ignored. We also learn from these series of verses that the humanity of the messengers has always been something humanity does not understand. Let me repeat that. The humanity of the messengers is something that humanity has always been puzzled at. And to this day, one of the main things they don't understand about a Prophet, for example, he married, he had multiple wives. What type of prophet is this? He's a human prophet. What's wrong with that? That's the only type of prophet there is, right? This is the point that they cannot understand, that prophets have to be from amongst your own. And Allah says in the Quran, if Allah had willed, He could have sent angels. But you would have rejected the angels because they're not human. This is human nature, right? If we had sent X, they went Y. If we had sent Y, they would have rejected it because it's not X. This is human nature. Allah says in the Quran, if we had sent angels, you would have rejected them. These are angels, how can we follow them? Right? So it is Allah's wisdom. He knows what we need, and we need human prophets. And that's exactly what we have. Of the benefits here is that the truth is so powerful that it will always have allies. And help will come to you from unexpected sources. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. Out of nowhere, the man comes. Now, he becomes a shaheed. Those three people are saved. Are they not? Right? There was a fear of death on those three. And no doubt, this is a shaheed, Allah has blessed him. But at the end of the day, those three were the disciples and they needed to be preserved. They needed to go elsewhere. They have what this Roman did not have. Even though Allah blessed him the way he deserves, but these are the actual disciples of Jesus Christ. And they needed to be sent elsewhere to propagate the da'wah. Allah saved them. How? Somebody came out of nowhere to help them. When you stand up for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will send help from places you never expect. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. Also we learn over here, and I mentioned this in a lot of detail, the wisdoms of how to give da'wah, the man's conversation, the man's techniques in talking, very beautiful manner of spreading the da'wah and putting all blame on himself, even though there was no blame on him, it was on them. And speaking in the first person when he's criticizing, and speaking in the plural when he's making them think. It's our God and your God. You're going to go back to Him. So speaking in the plural when the situation is appropriate, and speaking in the first person when the situation is appropriate as well. And also we learn over here, two final points, and then we open the floor for questions. Firstly, the one who's calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got to learn to overlook foolishness and anger and stupidity from his own people. He is not going to be a da'i if he is irritated at anything his people do to him. He needs to go above this. The man was killed by his own people. And our Prophet is being told, you need to realize your people have this animosity and hatred. And if they could have killed you, they would. They tried to kill him multiple times. But Allah protected him. If they could have killed you, they would. So he's being told, you're going to have to learn to overlook this. And then, the final point, not only this, you have to have genuine care and love and concern for your own people. So much so, like this man, his blood has not yet dried on his corpse from the kicking of his own people. And yet his soul in Jannah, what does it want? قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. I only wish my people knew. SubhanAllah, they're still around his dead body kicking him. And his heart is still wanting to give them good. And that's what Ibn Abbas said. This was a man who was sincere to his people, alive and dead. حَيًّا وَمَيِّتًا. He was sincere to his people, alive and dead. And this has to be the heart of the da'i. The heart of the one calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't have love and compassion for your people, how do you expect them to be guided? If you're not going to overlook some taunts, some ridicule, some physical threats, you're not going to get anywhere. And this clearly shows us that, again, this notion of hating the kuffar and whatnot, really these types of terminologies we need to completely reassess. Alhamdulillah, this is long gone from most people's vernacular, but nonetheless, we still find once in a while this type of thought. How do you expect to preach to people when some people say you have to hate them? This man, did he have hatred for his people who just murdered him? Think about it. Was his heart full of animosity or full of mercy? How he wants his people to know that Allah has forgiven him. How I wish my people could join me here in Jannah. SubhanAllah. He overlooks his own murder. He makes an excuse for his own killing. What type of man is this? This is a man who believes in Allah and who is preaching to others the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with this, we give our first pause